I'm not sure that the way I started was really all that good of an idea or even all that relevant. In 2020, I went on my first tour in 2004, but it got me wondering if that's how everyone feels about their first tour. So I started asking my friends. Some people were super organized or had really cool, very professional opportunities right out of the gate.
Basically, they embedded us in these luxury Mercedes vans like we were rock stars, with a couple music tech guys, and we were paid very well. And that was my first tour.
And I remember that we bought the A to Z of the UK. So, you could use that. There's that thing in the back. There's like one city there and another city here. And when you blow out your fingers together, you find out how far apart they were. And then you could calculate how long it would take to get from one city to another. So funny.
Because of that one play, an agent reached out and booked, 12 or 15 shows in a couple of weeks. And I got to do an in-studio on Bob Harris.
Other people were a bit more frantic or chaotic, like me.
I didn't care if there was only 6 people there. As far as I was concerned, I was on tour and I was playing the Enormo Dome.
I borrowed my dad's tiny sedan and I got a topper because I figured I was going to be gone for a month. I should bring all my clothes. I brought all of them. I had an air mattress and a sleeping bag and a pillow. So if I needed to sleep in there.
A few weeks ago, I published an episode all about my first tour. So if you haven't seen that yet, I recommend you watch it. I'll put it in the description bar below. And in this episode, I'm going to be interviewing some of my closest friends and absolute favorite songwriters, asking them all about their first time on tour.
I think there's a lot of common threads that we folk singer types share, but that one of the self-made tour, let's just say, I think is as a shared thing that binds us all together. That feeling that you have when you're just you invented your job, you invented this tour and you put yourself out there in the world and you're like, will you catch me? Will you, am I good enough? Can I keep, and then somehow the answer is actually no. And then there's a little, and you're like, yes.
This is my friend Korby Lenker. He is a killer singer-songwriter and is also the creator, writer, and star of an original web series called Morse Code. He and I toured together on the West Coast a couple of years ago, and it was really fun to watch how he operates up close. He was kind enough to sit down with me to chat for this episode. I was really excited to ask him about how it all started, and his answers were not what I expected.
I remember one that was one of those where it was a friend had a living room that maybe could set up a show, and maybe she had a crush on you, and that was really the agenda, but you maybe knew that, but you didn't care because you just wanted to play the show, and then you got there and I didn't tell anybody, and so it's just us.
It's like gig / catfishing.
Yeah, totally. Maybe not in that order. And God, that stuff is a real morale killer. Okay,
that part wasn't surprising, but the next part really took me by surprise.
One of the earliest tours I had was a European tour, actually. I had a weird kind of quick switch happen in my career where I was in this bluegrass band and I had made a couple of solo records, and a guy got excited about my songwriting and we cut a record together in San Francisco, and he was a bit of an industry person, and so he had some means and connects. And so he put that out, hired a publicist. He's the one who put the $20K into it or something to give it a ride. And because of that, Bob Harris picked up the record and spun it. And then because of that one play, an agent reached out and booked, 12 or 15 shows in a couple of weeks. And I got to do an in-studio on Bob Harris. That was really I was probably 27. I was like, well, great, it's happening. Wow, yeah. All you do is make a record and then somebody just pays for it. And then they send you across to the other side of the world. And then there are people there waiting for you to play and sing. No.
I always assumed that everyone's first tours were kamikaze disasters like mine. But it turns out some of my friends had really pro first experiences on the road, including my friend and Nobody's Girl bandmate, the one and only Ms. Grace Pettis.
Well, actually, I was incredibly spoiled, and it did not give me a realistic idea of what the next 10 years would be like, because right out of the gate, I got connected with some folks at Storyville Coffee, Full Sail University and Storyville Coffee, and they put on this kind of tour all around the country in support of the International Justice Mission, which like frees slaves around the world. You're hard pressed to find a better mission statement that you can really get behind as like an artist. And basically they embedded us in these luxury Mercedes vans like we were rock stars. They drove us all around the country and we played these house concerts in like, you know, these multi-million-dollar homes for people who had, you know, some resources. And our job was to like play this house concert and talk to them about this luxury coffee system, which was like the best state-of-the-art coffee maker system that you can buy. And all of the proceeds would go to the International Justice Mission. And we were paid very well. And that was my first tour. That was my...
Okay, follow-up question.
Yeah.
What was your second tour like?
So second tour. So I made lots of money for like a couple months and then the good times were over. And then I had to book myself.
Something I didn't remember when I filmed my first tour episode is that I was actually a little more organized than I give myself credit for. I printed out this whole binder full of information for me to have with me on the tour. Printed MapQuest directions of every route that I was driving. It had everywhere I was going to stay. It had all of my check-in times. Everything was immaculately organized in this little binder. I think that I made this binder because I wanted to feel a little bit more professional or a little bit more in control of the situation since I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Anyhow, I completely forgot I did that till I was talking to my dear friend, Glasgow's own, the one and only Mr. Findlaynapier.
No, 3 of us had studied music at university and at least 2 of us had had music business lectures, and I remember that one of them had some really, really solid advice about touring, which we took, which we did, you know. So we'd really put the work in. Like I think we actually had a bit of paper, you know, for each day, and we kind of had it loosely planned out. Like we knew where we had to be, what time the sound check was. We'd done all that. We did have an agent as well. I think actually it was remarkably well organised if I think about it. First tour was with a folk band called Back of the Moon, and we toured around England. It all worked fantastically well until we had to play in a place that I think was called Seaton, and it was all going well. And someone said to us the night before we had to go to Seaton, they said, "Hey, when are you? Which Seaton is it you're going to?" And we went, "Oh, f***."
Oh.
So Seaton was an hour away, but it was also 6.5 hours away. Classic. Absolute classic. Your engineer can bleep out my swearing, but yeah.
I feel like I was so much more organized for my first tour. I mean, some of the gigs were just open mics, nothing fancy, but I still had like a sheet for each day and how long the drive was and where I was staying. I had all my accommodations for the whole month figured out before I left. And now it's like, where am I staying on Thursday? I don't know yet. We'll figure it out then. And like nothing is written down.
We had a 10-week, and we called it the Rope Around America tour because the record that we were touring behind was called Rope Around My Heart.
These radiant human unicorns are my good friends Telisha Williams and Doug Williams, known collectively as Wild Ponies. They're incredibly talented in everything they do, in their songwriting, in their instrumental abilities, in their performances, but they're also really creative and savvy in how they run their business. So honestly, I don't know why I was surprised to hear that their first tour was like what most people would strive to achieve like 3 years in.
Well, here's the deal. Early in our music career, I bought that How to Be Your Own Booking Agent book that Jerry Goldstein wrote. And Jerry lived in our state. She lives in Charlottesville, Virginia. And she did like a weekend with Jerry diving into the book. And I
booked the shit out of it.
That's amazing. That's so helpful. Well, can you tell us like one hot tip you remember from that long weekend?
Jerry was one of the first people who talked to us about that branding piece.
Sure.
And,
yeah, totally.
Because when we were releasing that record, originally that record was going to be called Barroom Stories.
That's right. It was.
Because We thought we were all honky tonk, and she really challenged us on it. And as soon as we chose Rope Around My Heart, which was track number 5 on the record, the branding and everything really fell into place. And then I find those tours, and maybe you do too, Rebecca, find booking a branded tour is way easier, I think.
But we did this cool thing we called the Rope Around America tour because we were trying to capitalize on the few connections that we had around the country. We did this thing where we made our email list so that there was an extra column in it, and you could write down someone's name who had sent you to the show. And so the deal was whoever sent the most people to a show, whoever gets their name written down the most times on that sheet, we're going to incorporate their names into a song on the next record.
Y'all are geniuses.
Which we did, we did.
Totally did, yeah.
My theory has always been there's lifers and then people that aren't lifers. And some people just do it, and I've seen a million of them along the way, where they do it for a year or two and they realize just how bloody hard it is to do this for a living and really do it. And if you're a lifer, which obviously you are, and I knew it the very first time I looked in your eyes and we discussed music, I knew it. It was a kindred soul. I could do other things, but there's nothing else I want to do. I'd feel like my spirit was dead.
Talking to Steve Poltz is a lot like going to a Steve Poltz concert. You never know exactly where it's going to go, but you know it's going to be amazing and you're really happy to be there. And that's basically how I felt for our entire interview, and I loved what he had to say about his first tour.
Oh, so the guy that did it ran a radio show on 91X. It was a local show, and it was called Loudspeaker. He said, listen to the radio at 1:30 in the morning. I'm going to play your song. And I went to an all-night Denny's in Pacific Beach in San Diego. And I really thought I wasn't going to be able to go into Denny's because people would know that was me on the radio. I was so delusional. I actually love this kind of stuff because I'm still delusional. So it reminds me that nothing's changed. And I remember I said, oh my God, nothing's going to be the same. They played my song. And of course, nobody recognized me, not even anybody. And the waitress brought me my blueberry pancakes, and I ate them. So this tour came about because I kept throwing it out there, which I'm a big believer in. Throw things out there and just ask people. If you make them happy with your music, they want to do things for you. And so he said, I'll book a tour. And I said, I really want to go because all I'd done was play San Diego. So he booked this tour with me and a guy named Gregory Page and a guy named Jimmy Lewis, who was in a band called Bad Mood Zeus. And we were all piled into a little Toyota Corolla with all our cassettes and our guitars. And we played. I didn't care if there was only 6 people there. As far as I was concerned, I was on tour and I was playing the Enormo Dome. And so my mom, she wanted me to be a priest, but I didn't want to be a priest. But I went to the Catholic University and I studied religion and I played in the folk mass. I mean, my mom is now passed away and everything, but I still feel like the audience has been my mother. And I've been searching for acceptance from her. And it's not my mom's fault. It's just, we all have our own things. I really believe I'm searching for the acceptance of this woman. That's what the audience has been for me. And I'm trying to seduce and charm that audience, to gain love, to make myself feel that I'm actually whole as a human being.
And it was the first time I had driven to Texas, and I was like, this is amazing. This is the greatest. It was starting in Portland and drove the car all the way to Texas. I had a breakfast taco and I was like, why isn't this like what everyone eats for breakfast every day?
This is my best friend, Raina Rose. Like a lot of people in this video, I was a big fan of hers before we met, and I was a little tongue-tied, honestly, when we first met, but we became really good friends and we ended up touring together for years. We played hundreds of shows together, but I had never heard about what her first tour was like, especially the part where she got to Texas for the first time. She convinced me to move to Texas. So hearing her say that she didn't know what a breakfast taco was once upon a time, pretty amazing.
After the like beautiful Texas honeymoon, I drove north and played some horrible gigs in Colorado, drove at the bottom of Wyoming, and there was like a crazy snowstorm while I was driving. It was October, I think. And gas was under $1 a gallon. It was like 98 cents a gallon in Wyoming. Played somewhere in Idaho, something that was called like, it wasn't the Pig and Pancake, but it was something hilarious, some bar that had pigs in it, I think. Can't remember. And then I hit Oregon and I drove through the night over the Drinkwater Pass, which is this gorgeous, like hilly, it was moonlit, hilly pass and played in Eugene. Then when I drove home from Eugene, I was like, this is the greatest job of all time. I never want to do anything again. I'm just going to put all my eggs in this basket.
I love nostalgia, by the way, so that's a great place to start. And I was bummed out in LA, and somehow I got the idea to just do a tour. Well, if I'm playing around at these little coffee shops in LA, why don't I just get in the car and go do that elsewhere?
Oh, John Elliott. He's one of the first friends that I ever made as a touring singer-songwriter, and I'm so excited to introduce you to him and his wonderful music, which you can hear online under either his name, John Elliott, or The Hereafter.
I can't overstate how discouraging it can be to play music in Los Angeles, to start in Los Angeles. I really, in my experience, it was just very hard. And I was rarely handed cash for what I did. So I didn't imagine that you could make a living doing it. And I go up to Sacramento. It was like 100 people in this coffee shop. It was their like Saturday night series. They passed the jar around. And at the end of the night, he hands me like a wad that was $185. What? Like, what is this? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, all right, cool. Well, I guess I'll just do this. I was camping that whole summer because I didn't have enough money for hotels, Oh, God. You can't make that up. I mean, you get older and you just like, there's ways in which you calcify and you don't have the flexibility and just the freedom in your mind to just do that. Maybe not. I'm hopefully not, actually. But when I think about the way that I did that, it makes me feel like I don't know if I would quite do it like that again.
I feel the exact same way. Sleeping on floors at venues and eating canned food, living on, noodles that I would cook using the hot water spigot at gas stations. And I'm glad I did it. I'm not willing to do that stuff anymore. I'm just not. So I wonder if the reason that I'm able to have a career now as a touring songwriter is that I started when I was so young and was willing to do anything to make it happen, just whatever it took. So then I go and I talk to my friend Dan Navarro, a Billboard chart-topping songwriter, an amazing performer who didn't go on his first tour until he was like a year older than I am right now. So what the hell do I know?
I was older when I started touring. I didn't actually, because I was actually working as a songwriter, we didn't focus on recording, but we always wanted to. I started touring at the very middle of 1990, shortly before my 38th birthday. We did it all ourselves. We were touring in the record company's van, pulling a U-Haul trailer. We had a drummer, a bass player, and a cellist. And we left Los Angeles not really knowing what to do. We were heading to Denver. Halfway through the desert, I realized I hadn't booked any place for us to stay. So I was pulling 10% off coupons to Days Inn out of the back of the Rand McNally. And there were no cell phones in 1990 to speak of. So pull into a truck stop and call ahead and book these rooms for $45 a night. We kind of did it all ourselves, and we learned as we went. It was the Braille method of touring, to just sort of feel our way through the dark, make every mistake imaginable, and learn from it. Endless anecdotes of the silly stuff we did.
I have just one more interview for you, and it is one that I'm really excited about. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you to 15-time Boston Award-winning living legend, singer-songwriter, the one and only Mr. Ellis Paul.
Traveling in the 90s was great. It was like the Clinton years. People were buying CDs. I mean, we were making a third more money than we would make now because of the physical CD sales. And of course, the cell phone wasn't really developed at that point yet, where you could have a GPS in your hand and be making phone calls to people. And I'd have to pull over at a gas station at 1 o'clock in the morning to say, hey, I'm alive. Are you okay? And I love you. Bye. If I'm lucky enough to catch the person. Those were exciting times. I think, having done this for 30 years, I think the first 5 years of doing this, when I was jumping from playing open mics to featuring in the open mics to being on the road as an opener and occasionally doing them, those are the most exciting years because everything is so new and cool, Yeah, just stone by stone. You just got to build it gig by gig by gig and little victories.
All right, that is it for today. If you are a musician, please, what was your first tour like? Tell me in the comments. I would love to know. If you haven't been on your first tour yet and you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I would love to share any information I have. And if you've made it this far in the video, you're like officially one of my favorite people on the planet. Do me a favor and click the thumbs up if you liked the video. Click the thumbs down if you didn't like the video. Apparently it all helps. And of course, I'd love for you to leave comments so that we can chat and be friends. So huge thanks to all of the amazing songwriters who were interviewed for this episode. In fact, you can hear their music in a playlist that I've put together called Amazing Songwriters, and you can also find links to them on the internet in the description bar below. So please do check them out. They are all so talented. Lastly, I want to mention something that I haven't talked about here on the YouTube channel before, which is that this whole thing is made possible by the 350 beautiful individuals who support me over on Patreon. Patreon is a website where creators like me can release songs and essays and music and videos to an audience of people who say, yeah, I'd like to give you $1 every time you do that. If you like these videos and you'd like to help me make more of them, please head over to patreon.com/RebeccaLoebe and sign up. It starts at $1 a month, and every little bit helps me keep being creative, making music, and sharing videos like this with you guys. Thank you guys so much. Have a great one. Mwah. Bye.